Long ago, I asked the question, who comes to these conventions? We do, exactly. So I wrote a book called Get a Life. And in asking the question, who comes to these conventions and why, when I was asked that before I did the book, I very modestly said, they're coming to see me. When I did my due diligence and started doing interviews of people in the audience, I discovered in the book that you're coming to see each other. And renewing old friendships and seeing what happened during the year or what happened since the last convention that you were seeing your friends. And that was the thrust of the book. I interviewed people. I interviewed a woman who had multiple personalities, all of them Star Trek. She had Spock, a voice. The Spock voice would come out of her and would give her advice. And then for the romantic commanding figure, there was Sulu. Oh, dear. So she had 7 voices, and I was in. I had to fly to Dallas, Texas, to interview her from Los Angeles, and we had rented a hotel room, and I had a microphone set up and all. It was so weird. And then there was a young man, and maybe some of you remember him. I haven't seen him around of late. He was pathologically shy. He couldn't speak to anyone unless he had his cat, who was dressed up in a Star Trek uniform. And with his cat under his arm, he was a stand-up comic. Without the cat, he would bury himself in a corner. So this was the kind of thing I saw in the book and I wrote about it. A couple of years ago, I thought I would do it. I've been doing some documentaries that have had some success. And I thought I would do a documentary on who comes to conventions. And it was then that I discovered that it goes far deeper. We're in something far deeper than coming to see each other and renewing friendships, and the actors get to tell you what they're doing and what they've been in and what you might want to buy. Like my album coming out in October. No, I'm not going to tell you about my album that drops October 8th and it's really sensational. I'm not going to tell you about that. But what I discovered in doing the documentary film was that we're here because it's mythological. We're hardwired to seek explanations of things that we don't understand. Like in this case, what the cosmos is doing and what it's like way down deep in molecular energy and what's the universe, all the mysterious things to which there are no answers, but we seek an answer. And we seek it in science fiction, in comics, in horror, in fantasy. We seek an answer. And we know consciously there is no answer. But in this mystical thing called science fiction, we provide the possibility of answers. And that's what we're subscribing to. That's why we're here, even though many of us don't know it. And these kinds of things, the autograph, the signature, the picture, are all part of the ritual of this mythology. And we're all indulging in it, and it's growing. So we're part of an interesting force. I'm going to talk to you and answer your questions and riff on that. But as an opening remark, I thought that might be of interest to you, for those of you who haven't seen that documentary called Get a Life as well. And I thought maybe you'd be interested in what I'm doing, like when I'm not here. So what, for example, I just did last week was I was in Louisville, Kentucky, at the Kentucky State Fair, where they have the World Championships for American saddlebreds and a particular form of competition with standard breds. And I won a world championship with a standard bred, and I won a world championship with a saddlebred. The week before that, I was in California, and I won 2 championships on quarter horses as a reiner. So I've been doing a lot of competition on horseback. I also shot a a music video of the title song of that album, Ponder the Mystery. So we went up to the Sequoia National Forest and shot the Ponder the Mystery, the song, from which the album takes its name, is about the contrast of, and one of the lines is, a child's love and man's cruelty, ponder the mystery. And the song goes like that. So it's a contrast between the beauty and the harshness of life. And the sequoias seem to me to be filled with the magic of life. They're 2,000 years old, and they've survived so much that we shot the sequoias and me there lip-syncing to some of the words, and we'll contrast that with newsreel footage of some of the terrible things man does to man, and contrast what is in our nature of good and evil and generosity and selfishness, that sort of thing. So I shot the music video last week. When I leave Atlanta, I go to Indianapolis to see 2 babies, 2 horse babies shown at the Indianapolis Horse Show, and then I go, when I land in California, in Los Angeles, I'll be taken by car to shoot pickups shots of the music video that night, and then get back home. So I'm involved in a lot of competition in horses and a lot of creative things that are going on in my life. I'm sort of like in the fullness of all that creativity. I've learned to ride a horse better at my age, not because I'm physically stronger, but because I've begun to learn identification, empathy for life. As you might imagine, as you get older, you begin to think more of your mortality and the approaching moment of death and what happens after, what happens before, and what happens during and after. And for me, riding a horse and the empathy I feel towards the horse, the communication between me and the horse has increased, as I hope it has increased in my communication and the things I'm doing as an actor and a writer. I'm hoping that this empathy permeates everything I do, and that's what I'm learning and telling my kids about what it is I'm learning. So there you are. That's what I'm doing in the immediate moment. Let's ask a question, and I'll try and have fun with that. Are you set up for that? Do we have a question? Oh my God, we're not set up for a question. I see a hand. I just surmised that there would be a microphone in the house and a question. Come up here. You with your hand, come here. Are you able to manage, dear? I'm so sorry. You okay with that? No, I didn't mean to embarrass you, but you have a question. You have 3 questions.
They're along the same lines. I'm curious to know when Weird or What will come back, if it will. And I'm wondering if you'll ever do any more of the backstory or the raw story. Yeah, Robert. My husband and I love them, and I'm wondering if we'll see any more of any of those.
Right. Thank you, thank you. So she's asked a question about Weird or What, which was on the Sci-Fi Channel. I did 3 years of a sort of reality show. All these phenomena that we think is miraculous or mysterious, and tried to find a scientific answer for it, and we called it Weird or What, and it was on the Sci-Fi Channel for what was in Canada 3 years, and they played them all at once, so it was like a year on the Sci-Fi Channel. And no, although the ratings were very good, and I don't know why they wouldn't order more, they haven't. It was such an interesting show, Weird or What. Two guys are cleaning a window, 40 stories up in New York City. They're on that platform, and they're cleaning windows, and the thing breaks, and both men fall 40 stories. One lands and splats, and he's dead. And the other guy has hardly a bruise on him. What happened? How did one guy die immediately, and the other guy lived? They both fell the same distance at the same time. An attempt to explain that. Mummy that is 3,000 years old has embedded in it cocaine. Cocaine wasn't discovered until South America all these years later. I think we, the Europeans, discovered the coca leaf like in 1800, but long after the Egyptians mummified their kings. How did that happen? These kinds of questions that stagger us, that have no obvious explanation, we try to scientifically explain. So it was an interesting show. So no, I'm not doing that anymore. And why I'm not doing it anymore defies explanation too. So I really did. That's weird or what? I did a series of interviews called Raw Nerve. And I spoke to, over the 3 years that existed, I spoke to 39 people. And I had a setup in which the two chairs, mine and the person I was interviewing, were very close. You know, there's a bubble that surrounds us. It's about 18 inches that we feel comfortable around. If you violate that 18 inches, you get too close, some people will sort of back up. But different cultures have different bubbles. In the Middle East, it's very close. So somebody will stick their nose in your ear and feel comfortable from the Middle East, whereas we in the West think that you're closing in. So about 2 feet away, you can see the people's eyes, and you can see the nonverbal answers to your questions. And I had the best time talking to people. We edited down an hour to an hour and a half interview to a half hour. And so we took the salient moment, but it takes several minutes to warm somebody up. But somehow I was able to get a lot of people to reveal aspects of themselves that they have never revealed before. My dear friend Leonard Nimoy, I've known him all these years. I'm interviewing him, and I get him to tell us the story of his grandfather, who was a leather worker. He made shoes, among other things. And when Leonard would go home, especially during the early years as an actor, he would go home and he'd be sitting talking to his grandfather, and he'd find his grandfather's hand on his shoe. He'd be feeling the shoe, because he would judge Leonard's success as an actor by the wear and tear of his shoes. Beautiful story that Leonard had long since forgotten, but somehow I had evoked from him. Rush Limbaugh tells me about his childhood and in his household in somewhere in the South here, Georgia's out there. he would pretend to be a radio announcer in his house. And he began to talk about his childhood, and then found himself weeping in the interview. What's the name of the guy for Hustler? Larry Flint. That was in the morning with Rush Limbaugh, an arch conservative. And in the afternoon, I had Larry Flint, an arch liberal. And I got him talking about his wife and the drug addiction that they had both succumbed to during their marriage. And suddenly he was weeping. In the morning, I had Rush Limbaugh, and in the afternoon, so it was a magical time for me to be able to talk to these 39 people and find things out about them that nobody else had been able to find, only because I was interested, and I think also that I was close enough to them to be in their soul and they in mine. It was this empathy that I was talking about. It was so good, and I had the best time. It's been canceled, which enters the area of weird or what. So that's the answer to your two questions. A backstory. What do you mean by that?
Bill, we have some questions back there.
Aftermath. Yes, you mean aftermath. You have some questions, you say, hold on, where are you? Over there, okay. So you're set up now, are you? The first
Yes.
question? All right. Young lady was talking about aftermath. I also had a program on the air a couple of years ago. I had 4 shows on the air. Aftermath was an idea I had about things that were in the headlines, events that were in the headlines 5 years ago. Big headline. And then it was a news story, then didn't become a news story. It went its way and other news took over. I went back to those people to find out what their lives were like now, and had the best time with them. One I remember was the teacher, Tourneau. Do you remember her? She was teaching young teenagers, in this case 13-year-olds, in a classroom. And she and a 13-year-old, she was in her late 20s at the time, Mary Kay, right? Letourneau? And her 13-year-old lover, she was arrested and was given the chance to stop seeing him and not go to jail. And out of this romantic love she had for him, she said, I can't give him up. And she went to jail for 7 years, bore his baby, came out of jail, and they got married. And they're now, at that point, 3 years ago, they were still together. I detected in him, because he's like now in his early 20s, I detected in him a certain restlessness. I mean, he was a teenager. He was 13 years old. He gets married to this lady who goes to jail, and he may have seen other people, but ostensibly not. Remained faithful to her, and then bore other children. It was Romeo and Juliet. It was the great romance that everybody pushed aside and denigrated. But to me, at that moment, it was a great love story that had taken place. That sort of thing was called Aftermath, and I was able to do that for 1 season. I loved talking to people. I loved finding out, meandering down that conversational path that you can have. If you engage somebody in a conversation and you're interested in them, and they're interested in you, that can be a magical time for you, especially if it's done over single malt.